have a bad feeling that Max and I are going to have the same Howell comp.
Really?
I don't know why. I have no reason to think this.
I purposely try to make it non-Baker. Welcome to another episode of Boom or Bust, the draft show. Max Chadwick alongside Nick Merriam and Donny Clemons going over another quarterback scouting report video. So we did Kenny Pickett, we did Matt Corral. Now we're doing North Carolina quarterback Sam Howell, his scouting report going over his strengths, weaknesses, player comp, ranking, team fit, so much more. Before we start the video, please like and subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell, turn on notifications. Of course, be sure to follow our Twitter, Instagram, TikTok at Boom or Bust Draft. Follow Donnie at TikTok at Pick and Spreads. And follow all of us on every social media platform, basically. At Chad_Maxwick for me, at Nicholas Sports for Nick, and at Pick and Spreads for Donnie. And again, we're on YouTube, anywhere you get your podcast, so please like and subscribe and check out the merch store. Leave a review in Apple or whatever. We might be doing a mailbag pod pretty soon. That could be pretty fun. So leave some questions there and keep commenting below. So let's go over Sam Howell. He is a junior, 6 feet tall, 221 pounds, former 4-star recruit, number 93 overall, the number 6 quarterback in the class of 2019 coming out of North Carolina. In 12 games this year, he completed 63% of his passes for 3,056 yards, 24 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions. He also ran for 828 yards and 11 touchdowns. And in his career, he completed 64% of his passes for 10,283 yards, 92 touchdowns, and 23 interceptions. He also ran for 1,009 yards and 17 touchdowns. So, Nick, when you watch Howell, what do you like the most?
So I think he makes the most impressive pocket throws in this class consistently. And it's a little tough with him because I think, they run kind of a spreadish system, but it's a college spreadish system where they run a lot of play action. There's some translation there to the NFL. It's not complete, but you see him layer the ball over linebackers, underneath safeties, get that dip to a pass. You see the sideline accuracy people have talked about for a long time. This was kind of the early thing with him was, oh my God, this guy throws amazing sideline touch balls. His accuracy downfield on the sideline is awesome. And it's still there. I think his accuracy deep is impressive. His mechanics are developed. He's played 3 years. He started 3 years. He's played high-level football for 3 years. I don't know that people necessarily know that. I know the name was being thrown around last year, but he was really good 3 years ago too. And it was pointed out to me by a North Carolina fan that he was playing well, but he was playing well enough at that time that scouts knew that this guy was going to be a name in this draft. And that's kind of the reason why we had him as a top 2 player coming into this year. And obviously his play dipped, but a lot of that we can kind of say was because they lost weapons. They lost offensive line talent. They lost running backs, which do matter more in college. So it obviously hurt them to lose a Michael Carter and Javonte Williams, who both are good players in the NFL, let alone college, and how dominant they were last year. I mean, heck, they had a game where they ran for like 600 yards. I mean, those are big deals. And with all that going away, De'Ami Brown, Daz Newsome, he played well. It took him a little while. The first game against Virginia Tech was tough. But you saw him add a couple things to his game. The mobility was impressive. He's shifty for a guy his size. I don't know that he's that fast, but he's definitely tough and can take on those hits. I honestly think he's tough enough that he could probably take some hits at the NFL level and be all right with it. And that's another thing I think that adds to his scouting report. That's interesting. Is he is a bigger guy. He's not tall, which I think is overrated. Quite frankly, I think we very often confuse height with size. I think, quite frankly, weight is way more important, especially for a guy who is taking the hits he does in the run game. And it also can translate to arm talent, which I think this guy's got a rocket. I believe that's kind of what we looked at with a lot of the QBs in this draft class is a lot of them have pretty good arms. That's kind of what separated them. And Howell's definitely there, and that contributes to his downfield accuracy. And the 3-year, the amount of experience he's had in college has kept him kind of afloat despite playing less. It's a little bit of everything. And I think the main thing is just that he is very comfortable in the pocket and has consistently for 3 years now shown you that he can play from there and deliver accurate throws to all levels of the field.
Nobody has better production in this class than Sam Howell when it comes to the top 6 quarterbacks. Nobody does. Nobody has consistently played very well for 3 years in a row, especially in the Power 5 conference, which matters. So, and just like Nick also said, nobody has a better deep ball in this class, in my opinion, than Sam Howell, at least when it comes to consistency. Maybe Malik or Corral make more like, wow, crazy throws, but when it comes to consistency with downfield throws and sideline throws or anything like that, nobody is more consistent in this class than Sam Howell. Also improved a ton as a rusher this year. Rushed for nearly 900 yards, I believe, maybe a little bit over 900 yards, almost 1,000 yards, which is
828.
828, which is very, very, very impressive, especially since we haven't really seen that because in his other 2 years he rushed for 100 and then maybe like 80. Like it just kind of came out of nowhere this year. And I love the memes on Twitter that everyone was saying. Everyone was like, "Oh, Sam Howell is if Lamar Jackson and Baker Mayfield had a baby." I thought those memes were hilarious. But Sam Howell, great arm, and we'll get to the weaknesses soon. But I think he has a great arm. His accuracy might be the best day one in this class. He's the most polished quarterback in this class. He has the best production of any quarterback in this class. And that's basically it. And yes, he did take a bit of a down year this year, but can you really blame him? He didn't really have the best situation. His offensive line was ranked at like 109 according to 109th according to Pro Football Focus out of like 130 teams, which is pretty bad, especially when you're a Power 5 team. And yeah, you're playing in the ACC, so there's not a ton of elite pass rushers, but still, that shows you how bad his offensive line was. Didn't really thrive right away in game one. That was a bad performance against Virginia Tech because I remember watching it, getting super excited, like, oh, I think Sam Howell could win the Heisman. And he was pretty bad. So outside of that game, I thought this year he was fine considering how bad his situation was. He did have Josh Downs, who I feel like everybody does forget about him because I think he's arguably a top 5 wide receiver in college football. But outside of him, he really had nothing. He had no offensive line. He had Ty Chandler, but it's not like he's that great either. So overall, production, polished, and he's been good for 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, you guys really hit it all. I mean, he's got an absolute cannon of an arm. I think one of the strongest arms in this class, probably the only guy maybe put above him is Malik Willis. And I think he's got the best deep ball in this class as well. No, I don't think Matt Corral's got a stronger arm. I think we went over that previously. I think Sam Howell's got him there. Accurate.
Yeah, I think Max is right about that. Yeah.
All right, let's go. I'm not the only one. All right, let's go. He's accurate over the course of his career. He throws with great touch. Very good in the pocket, Nick. You mentioned this too. I think he manipulates the pocket really well. He's a 3-year starter, like you guys mentioned. He's been great all 3 years. Like, he's had the best overall career of any quarterback in this draft. And the interesting thing is, he's really the only quarterback in this class, or out of the top quarterbacks at least, who has played only 3 years of college football. Every other quarterback that is one of the top in this class has played at least 4 years of college football. So Sam Howell is younger than them, and he's also probably the best career out of all of them as well. And you guys mentioned before, he lost Diami Brown, lost Daz Newsome, lost Javonte Williams, lost Michael Carter. I still think he's a very, very good quarterback. He started off slow, which is why I think a lot of people just cast him aside and said, okay, he stinks too. Like, Rattler has had a bad year. Sam Howell's having a bad year too. People who didn't really realize that, hey, he actually kind of turned it on down the stretch of the season, and he became an incredible dual threat quarterback, which personally I did not know that he had in him. He was an absolute tackle breaking machine. I think only second to Malik Willis. Like, he was forcing missed tackles at a rate that we've never really seen quarterbacks do before Malik Willis this year as well. And at 221 pounds, he's a load to bring down. I don't think he's very fast or very quick, but he is big and he runs like it too. And an interesting quote that, I saw an interview with him, and he told the person, like, hey, where did this come from, this rushing ability? He was like, dude, we had Javonte Williams and Michael Carter. Like, why the hell would I run the ball when we had those two guys in the backfield? It's like, all right, maybe that's why, dude. Maybe that's why we didn't see this before. I really thought this is a guy who can move a little bit, but he's a really good passer. And then all of a sudden, when he loses those two superstar running backs and two stud receivers, still has Josh Downs, but I was like, he became a really, really good dual threat quarterback this year, which was kind of surprising to me. But Donnie, what are the weaknesses that you see with Howell?
Well, it's something Nick did bring up slightly. I'm going to bring it back up. He kind of plays in a college-y offense. Now, it's not to the extent of Matt Corral playing in an RPO offense. Sam Howell still does play in a spread offense, but it's definitely a college-y-ish spread offense. A lot of a lot of screen passes in it, that at least that I have noticed. Another issue is that, like we've mentioned this entire video, he definitely took a down. He had a down year this year. Like, he wasn't very good, but to say he was bad isn't really. I think that's kind of unfair to him, because I agree with what Max said. A lot of people are saying, oh yeah, Spencer Rattler had a horrible year, so that means Sam Howell also had a horrible year. Like, no, I thought Sam Howell was fine, especially towards the end of the year. And like I said, with a horrific, outside of Josh Downs, who, like I said, might be a top 5 wide receiver in college football. Outside of that, not a good supporting cast whatsoever playing in the Power 5 conference. He also, this is the most common thing you'll hear, he plays hero ball way too much, way too much. Like, we talked about how Zach Wilson plays hero ball, and yes, it worked, and that's what happens when you have one of the best offensive lines and you're playing cupcakes in college football. But when you're in a Power 5 conference and you have nothing outside of Josh Downs, that's going to hurt you. And he played hero ball a ton, and it was super noticeable in the first game. The game-sealing interception he threw, I don't know if any of you guys can find that clip, but when I saw that throw, I was like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? Like, why would you throw that? There's still time on the clock. Throw it out of bounds. Don't just it was a dumb decision. And that's also another thing this season, and I'm gonna keep bringing up this season because there isn't really a lot of weaknesses from past seasons outside of this one. Past seasons, though, he wasn't a great rusher, but this year he really showed us he can be. Plays hero ball way too often because I feel like he feels like he needs to carry the team, because he knew, like, okay, I'm losing Daz Newsome, I'm losing Diami Brown, I'm losing Javonte Williams, I'm losing Michael Carter. I have to carry this team, and I hate to break it to you, not even Patrick Mahomes can carry a whole team around you. You need a team around you to help you out, and he needs to learn that going into the NFL, which is why I feel like if a team that has a decent roster drafts him, he's going to be very good right away.
Yeah, I agree on that point. That's just an extension of the hero ball thing, because I think that was more earlier in the year for him. He kind of got away from it in terms of the passing out of structure. And this turns into a weakness for me in that his outside of structure play, he has to run. It's the only thing he knows how to do. I think he is quite frankly, terrible improviser. He doesn't really keep his eyes downfield when he's outside the pocket. He isn't completely accurate. His mechanics aren't completely pristine when he's on the run. And you saw turnovers early in the year because of it. He made a lot of stupid throws, threw interceptions in big moments. And one of the changes he made midseason was, instead of throwing that ball into dangerous places, I'm just going to run and get yards that way. And it worked. But I don't know that that's going to be a thing that he can do in the NFL. You can't just run the ball every time. You need to improvise. So that needs to be improved. But more important detail for me is, and this is where the complexities of kind of choosing QB1 in this draft class come, is we talk about Matt Corral, not difficult progressions wise. And when he sees the open receiver, he's really quick to recognize, quick twitch, ball out. Sam Howell goes through progressions. You see him scanning the field. He needs not just half field reads, although there's a lot more of that in college. He does have some full field reads on tape, which Matt Corral didn't have many of. That's good. You want to see more of those. And he's very good at finding the open receiver. He can scan, find the guy. But that time difference between him and Corral of, I see the open receiver, get the ball out, a lot longer. I don't think his twitch is that quick. And I think it's not like staring down receivers, but it's just not as fast as you'd like it to be. And I think there are times where he has the open receiver. He maybe thinks about it for a moment and he throws it in. He's not really leading to turnovers, but it's inaccuracy sometimes. And it's something that comes with reps. And the reason it worries me is because this is year 3. And if that's showing up on tape, maybe he doesn't trust his receivers because he's lost some guys, but you would hope that a guy would be quicker to get the ball out when he's recognized the open receiver than I think we've seen from Howell in some of these games where he's played poorly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the biggest things that I noticed that you guys actually didn't mention was, I think his pocket presence is a mess, dude. Like, this is a guy who plays hero ball way too much, like you guys both mentioned, but he converts pressure to sacks at like an incredibly high rate. So when you get a pressure on Sam Howell, there's a chance you're going to get sacked because, like you guys mentioned, he plays hero ball. He will not give up on plays. He will not give up on plays. He thinks he can just escape. And like Nick mentioned, he's not really good outside of structure. I agree with that because he gets sacked a lot. And there's a lot of times like, dude, just get rid of that football. And he doesn't. Whereas other quarterbacks in this class are way better at getting rid of that football. Sam Howell does not. And he gets sacked at a very, very high rate. You see guys like Matt Corral, like I think gets rid of the ball at a very good rate. Kenny Pickett as well, did so this year as well. Sam Howell is not that. He is a guy who's going to hold on to that football. He's going to try to make something happen. And a lot of times it's going to happen into a sack. So I think his pocket presence is very good. I don't really think he goes through his progressions as much as I would have wanted him to do this year. I think if his initial read was not open, he took off. And he missed open receivers because of it. So sometimes he's just kind of looking at the one guy and said, all right, screw it, I'm going. And he ran a lot this year. UNC offense, we mentioned this before, not a very pro-style one. There's not a lot of horizontal throws on tape, a lot of vertical throws in Sam Howell's tape, and so many RPOs, and some horrible decision-making at times. And Donnie, you mentioned that Virginia Tech pick. Like, they were driving down the field, I believe, to tie the game, and he was getting sacked. And instead of getting sacked and you say, okay, take another play, and yeah, we'll be down 8 yards, but whatever, he like spins away and just throws it up in the air and it gets picked off and game over. And you're like, dude, what were you even thinking doing that? And there's actually other open receivers on the play. Like that play basically encapsulates everything that went wrong this year for Sam Howell. So there have been some really bad decision making because he thinks I'm the best quarterback in the country. I'm going to be the first pick in the draft. I can do whatever the hell I want. And this is a weakness that we saw with Trevor Lawrence a little bit, not to the extent that Sam Howell did, but Trevor Lawrence kind of played a little bit hero ball too. He's like, I can just make whatever throw I want. And you saw some bad interceptions because of it. But I think Sam Howell's way worse than that problem for Trevor Lawrence. But Nick, what is the bottom line for Sam Howell, where he ranks for you, player comp, team fit? What do you think about Sam Howell?
So yeah, he's risen to QB2. There's been some Kenny Pickett. There's been some things at Senior Bowl this week, and I think beyond expanding beyond that, watching tape of Howell made me rise him on the board beyond what I had him when we did that Pickett video. Pickett's fallen for me. I think he's going to fall for a lot of people. The initial ranking for him may have been more about the fact that Pickett was NFL sized, which should tell you how much that really means. But Sam Howell, for me, QB2, number 13 on my board. I still think he's a really solid prospect, and he's in that Mac Jones range, I believe. I know Jordan Reed, that's his name, right? He's the ESPN guy now. Went on a podcast, it's one of the Washington podcasts I listened to, John Kyman. He was talking about how he didn't see any of these QBs above Mac Jones last year. He thought they were all between that and like the Trask. For me, I think Howell and Corral are all at or above Jones, and everybody else is in that range. I still think Howell kind of, what you've seen from before, it's a difficult situation having guys leave your team and having to adjust on the fly for 1 year, you know? So it's reasonable that he would play not as well this year as he did last year. And I think because of that, we should still kind of give him the benefit of the doubt and have him as a top 20 at least player in this draft class. I think honestly, I think it's a little crazy having below that just because of what he's done in previous years when he has talent around him. And there's a lot of teams that need quarterbacks that have talented rosters. Washington, Minnesota, if they get rid of Kirk Cousins. I think Atlanta has some offensive talent. We said Washington. Who am I thinking? Denver. Denver. Carolina's got defensive talent. They need a lot of Pittsburgh. I mean, there are teams here in the top 20, obviously, that need quarterback help and have weapons. And if you put him in that system, he'll have a much easier time, honestly, than he did at North Carolina. So to me, that makes it intriguing. I don't know if I said, I said 13th on my board. And my comp for him is actually going to be Dak Prescott. We can talk about this before the video.
I thought about it too. I even did. I thought about it. I did.
I thought it was going to be so original.
But you know, it was more of just when I watched the guy, I think there's a lot statistically and in the way his actual face looks that makes you think Baker Mayfield.
Yeah.
But when I actually watch the guy and look at how he moves, it looks like Dak Prescott to me. Kind of the way he can spin out of a pocket, kind of throw the ball off his back foot, the way he runs, which is, he's faster than the average quarterback, but it's really more of a physical thing. He doesn't use it all the time. The way he escapes the pocket, which is a little bit, unruly at times, which is kind of how Dak Prescott was, and the way he throws the ball. I think we said this about Pickett, I think to more extent, he can throw the touch ball, he can throw the power ball, but more often than not, it's like a hybrid throw from him, which is, again, what I think Dak has. So that's the comparison. I think Dak's probably a better player. You're going to hear this from us whenever we have a comp from a really good player, but to me, I think there is a ceiling there that is a similar type of player for Sam Howell.
So I also agree with Nick about Kenny Pickett. Kenny Pickett is falling on probably all of our boards because he definitely, now here's the thing. There's no quarterback at the Senior Bowl. I just bit my tongue. No quarterback at the Senior Bowl was just absolutely lights out. Like, none of them were. Now, you've probably heard that, Malik Willis has been good. And he has been good at the Senior Bowl, but he hasn't been absolutely tearing it up. And Kenny Pickett, who was probably the worst quarterback at the Senior Bowl, he wasn't necessarily just god-awful or horrific. It's not like he was like Jamie Newman last year. Like, no, he was fine, but he wasn't good at all. Like,
I forgot about that. That was insane. The Jamie Newman
I
Senior
wrote
Bowl.
an article that killed him.
I completely forgot about
absolutely. That. I was talking to my friend about it, and I said if Jamie Newman would have played at Georgia, I truly believe he could have been at least decent. And now he's been a UDFA for 9 months now.
I was convinced he was going to be like a 4th round pick still after like day 1, and then it was all downhill after I wrote that.
Dude, I loved him. after looking for the Senior Bowl. I was like, dude, this might be like QB6 or whatever.
Well, the game was bad. The game was bad.
Yeah, it was bad.
Yeah, but anyway, back to Howell. He was decent at the Senior Bowl, probably, at least from what people have told me, probably the second best quarterback at the Senior Bowl, which then it just, real quick, just to remind you guys, nobody was dominant at the Senior Bowl. And nobody was. Nobody was dominant. I don't even know if anybody was good. Like, they were all just meh. Maybe Malik Willis was good for his standards anyway. But Sam Howell was fine at the Senior Bowl, but I still think he's QB2, which I know I said earlier I think Kenny Pickett's QB2. Kenny Pickett's fallen down my board, and Sam Howell has been rising a bit up on my board. He's currently number 19 overall on my big board, my number 2 quarterback. My comp, I'm just going to stay original. I'm just going to say he's Baker Mayfield. But here's the thing before everybody starts freaking out, because I know everybody likes to talk about this. He's not actually Baker Mayfield. He's not going to be NFL Baker Mayfield because, first off, he doesn't have an ego like Baker Mayfield, which I truly believe that's one of the reasons why Baker started to play worse as like his years went on. He won't most likely have any like team problems because I don't think Sam Howell is a bad leader. When I see him, he's confident, he's smart, and I like that. And I think he's a good leader, especially, and I know this is a weird example, but whenever he said his goodbye to North Carolina, watch the whole video, I thought he spoke with a lot of confidence. I thought he showed no ego whatsoever, and he was grateful that he was there, which Baker's ego, I hate to say it kind of killed him in the NFL, and I don't think Sam Howell has an ego whatsoever. So just going to say that preference, just preferencing that, because it's one of the stupidest things I see on Twitter, like, oh, it's comp is Baker, oh, he's going to be a bust. And it's like, no, that makes no sense, like, whatsoever. Because Baker was a talented guy. Like, he was a talented quarterback. He won number 1 overall for a reason. Like, he did. He was the number 1 overall pick for a reason. He won the Heisman. He was a great college quarterback. He had a good rookie year, and then it just kind of started to fall downhill. And I think Sam Howell can obviously be better than Baker Mayfield, especially if you put him on a team like Denver and maybe the Steelers. So, like I said, number 19 on my big board, my QB2, and my comp is Baker Mayfield, but he's not actually Baker Mayfield. So just don't get it twisted. Just because his comp is Baker Mayfield doesn't mean he won't be Baker Mayfield. Like, I just see that all the time on Twitter, and it just annoys me so much.
Yeah, and I mean, to be fair, like, Baker was like good last year too, you know, where this has kind of been like half of his career has been absolutely terrible. Like, his second year was really bad. This year was bad. But this rookie year and last year was like really good. So honestly, like, I personally, I'm gonna get a lot of flack for this. I still think the jury's out on Baker Mayfield. Like, I don't think it's over yet. Yeah, I don't think it's over yet. So I think a lot of people are kind of going a little bit crazy with that and saying, oh, Cleveland's got to look at a quarterback. I'm like, no, let's give him one more year and then we'll decide. But Sam Howell, for me, this is going to be crazy to you guys, I think. I have him, I think, 6th overall right now and QB1 on my big board. I am a fan, man. I'm a big fan of Sam Howell. Listen, the big board, I will tell you right now, is not finalized. And we're going to come out with an updated big board soon, and we'll have some pretty definitive takes. Right now, I am jumbling it up all the time, but right now he's number 6 overall, QB1. I think he's got the second best physical tools in this quarterback class behind Malik Willis. But unlike Willis, I think he's got a pretty high floor because of how good and accurate he's been. So Malik Willis has kind of had probably has the lowest floor of all the top 6 quarterbacks in this draft, but he's got the highest ceiling, which is why he's going to be, probably higher up on our boards. Sam Howell has got the second highest ceiling, but a pretty damn high floor, and one of the highest floors, I think, in this quarterback class because of how good he's been. He needs time, though, to understand how to work through progressions in a pro-style offense and take what the defense gives him. So if he goes to a good team, it'll take a few games or maybe even a whole year before he starts getting good. I don't think this is a guy who immediately is just going to light it up. You got to give him a little bit of time. The comp, I was pretty upset about it, but Nick took it too. Dak Prescott. That was what I had too.
We were on a streak, too.
We were on a streak. We were on a streak, but Dak is another rocked up quarterback, 6'2", 225, so a little bit taller, but still just this big quarterback like Sam Howell, load to bring down in space. And also, he's got a very, very good deep ball, underratedly good deep ball, which I think Sam Howell also has. Team fits. I would love the Panthers at 6. Keep him in Carolina. He's actually from North Carolina, too. Keep him there. Falcons, Broncos, Washington, Vikings, any of those teams that need a quarterback, Steelers, they should be looking at Sam Howell, who I think is the top quarterback in this draft. But if you disagree with me, if you agree with Donnie and Nick and think Matt Corral is a top quarterback in this draft, or you think Kenny Pickett, even though he's got probably pretty small hands, which we mentioned in a previous video, I've heard 8 1/4 inch, which has never been, no quarterback has ever had that small. No quarterback has ever been that small before. So we'll see.
I'm a not big dude. Like, I'm like one of the smallest kids on the team. 5'9", 170. And my hands are like 7.5. So
that should tell you.
Too. So that's like not good. Like, that's close.
Yeah. 8 1/4. Like, people are saying Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow's 9-inch hands, man. Kenny Pickett's 8 1/4. And literally someone said there's never been a quarterback who's played like significant amount of time in the NFL who's had that small hands. So we'll see with Kenny Pickett. But this is what we got on Sam Howell. But if you think Kenny Pickett is still QB1, despite all the concerns that are coming out during the Senior Bowl, if you think Desmond Ridder, Carson Strong, Malik Willis, exactly. Anyone you think is QB1 is a weird quarterback class. Let us know your opinion in the comments. Please continue to comment who you want to see us do, what videos you want to see us do too. We're getting through a lot of scouting reports. We're probably getting to some different videos too. Just gotta shake it up a little bit. So let us know what you guys want to see us do. Please like and subscribe to the channel. Be sure to follow our Twitter, Instagram, TikTok at Boomer Bust Draft. Follow our personal Twitters and Instagrams as well. Follow Donnie at TikTok at Pick and Spreads. And please like and subscribe. Rate us 5 stars. Do whatever you can. Turn on notifications below. So for Nick Merriam and Donny Clemons, I'm Max Chadwick. Have a great night.